determination to take them on and take them out of British politics. But you know, it's not a good night for anybody who campaigns against racism in politics. They wear suits, but they're at heart, that's the kind of party they are.
We've seen them making headway in local elections. They're now making headway in the European Parliament. Do you think they'll make headway in a national election, in the national election in 11 months' time, or do you think they'll fade away there?
Well, it was quite interesting, David, the result you read out from Burnley not so long ago, which was, you know, where voters have seen evidence of the British National Party in local government, you know, their vote has gone down since 2004. So, you know, where the novelty wears off and they see them in their true colours and the kind of people they are, then, you know, quickly they lose, you know, they lose faith and they lose support. So, you know, it's going to be a long job. As I say, we've got to understand and connect with people as to why they voted for the BNP and never just dismiss why they've done that. I certainly wouldn't do that. But painstakingly win them back to mainstream politics, and that's what all of the main parties, I think, have to do. But it is a sad moment, in my view.
We have the share of the vote now from Yorkshire and the Humber. Conservatives on 25%. No change in the Conservative share of the vote. Labour down 8%. UKIP up 3. The Liberal Democrats down 2. The BNP on 10 percentage points, up 2 percentage points. The Greens up 3 percentage points. English Democracy up 1 percentage point on 3 points.
What's interesting, we're seeing dramatic drops, nevertheless, in the number of votes. Because this was all postal ballot last time, you see that the Labour Party's vote has dropped by about 183,000 in that region.
Are you suggesting there's a differential fall there's between Tory and Labour because because of the abolition of postal ballots?
Well, there's something going on there, but what's interesting for people who are worrying about the growth of the BNP, their vote is actually 6,000 less than it was last time because of this switch to all postal ballots to what it is now, but they've got enough of a share of the vote in order to take a seat. I mean, it's interesting that Nick Griffin, the party...
if everybody stops postal balloting, they all have to go down to the polling station. You expect the BNP to be affected just like Labour, just like the Conservatives?
No, what a lot of the opinion polling is showing is that the willingness to vote, as a percentage of those people saying that they have a preference for a particular party, it is the extreme parties that have the greatest willingness to vote. In other words, they think it is worthwhile getting out to vote. It's also true not on the extremes, but on the margins of UKIP. They are keener to vote. Conservatives are the keenest to vote amongst the main parties at the moment. And so you see this differential willingness to vote is there. But it's for people who are worried about the BNP, they will be deeply, deeply depressed that the BNP have any representation in their Parliament or Assembly at all. But their actual number of votes is lower than it was 5 years ago.
Marc Francois, Conservative Shadow Europe Minister, is here with us. What's your reaction to this BNP victory?
Well, I'm very sad that they have gained a seat in the European Parliament. But I am pleased that we kept both of our seats, that Evan Whitman and Scott and Timothy Kirkhope have been re-elected. And I'm also pleased that our share of the vote held steady. It would appear that the BNP have taken the seat mainly at Labour's expense. They had 2, they've now only got 1. And Labour's vote share is down 8%, and we held our ground. But I do think it's a disappointing night for British politics that the BNP have been elected.
How do you think the BNP should be counted?
Sorry, do you say counted or counted? I think we have to. I think we have to expose what they believe in. I think we have to make clearer to people the kind of racist policies that they really advocate. I think we have to work harder to try and get that across. But I think Labour have a particular challenge because it seems as if the BNP have been elected in this region largely at Labour's expense.
What if the people who vote BNP are racist, do want an end to immigration, do want voluntary repatriation?
I'm not saying for one moment that the people who voted for them are racist. I think they voted for them partly out of frustration.
How do you know that? People always say that. But it's very clear what the BNP stands for, and yet the bigger parties like you and the Liberals, Liberal Democrats and Labour all say, oh, the people who vote, don't blame the people who vote for them, they don't support the BNP. How do you know they don't support the BNP?
Well, I suspect when the dust has settled, you know, a lot of research and analysis will be done into exactly what has lain behind the result. But I think it is clear that the BNP are a racist party, but I think we have to work harder to get that across to the general public.
I hope we may be able in a moment to hear Andrew Bronze, the BNP speaker, the BNP elected MEP, that is, speak. I say I hope, I mean in the sense that technically I hope we may be able to go over for it. We will in a second, but we have another victor speaking for the moment. Nick.
What's interesting, and I think is not widely known, is the degree of cooperation there was between the three big parties ever so quietly to try and counter the BNP. There was an agreement that the parties would try to put candidates in areas where they knew they'd be slaughtered, because the more candidates there are, the harder it is for the BNP to get elected. There was quite a lot of behind-the-scenes cooperation amongst parties to say it is better that people vote for anyone other than the BNP. It hasn't proved to be enough in this particular case, and that will raise a debate about what more can be done then by mainstream parties.
What you're
to try and
saying
counter the
in
BNP.
Yorkshire and the Humber, the main parties put up more candidates than they otherwise would have, or they got all sorts of little parties to put up?
No, the main parties. In other words, there are areas where the Conservatives wouldn't have a prayer, they might not care about, for their own party's interests, about putting up a candidate. It helps to counter the BNP, though, if more candidates are put up. Ditto Labour in other areas.
Do you buy this argument that people who vote BNP don't support the policies of the BNP on the whole?
Oh, well, there's evidence that some of the people you talk to on the street do indeed share the anger about immigration, but they don't necessarily share the detail of refusing membership to black people or repatriation and so on. So they may share some of the frustrations that are exhibited by the BNP, but not the specific racist policies of the BNP.
Andrew Bronze, the new BNP MEP, is just coming to the podium.
Again, I'd like to thank the returning officer and his staff. I think that the way that this monumental task was carried out was an absolute credit to him and to every one of his staff. I don't think I need to tell you that my election is not universally popular in this room. I've heard a rumour that Mr. Brown is thinking now that we might do with this election what they did with the Irish referendum, and that is to call another one and possibly another one until they get the right answer. That's democracy in the 21st century. If you're disappointed with my election, you might be disappointed to be reminded of the fact that I'm actually a government and politics teacher. And I first came across Mr. Daunt's name, the inventor of the voting system, as long ago as 1977, when it was first mooted by Mr. Callaghan when he was Prime Minister. And I like to pride myself that I'm one of the few people who actually understand it. And I was trying to explain it to my colleagues earlier about multiples of 16.6 and whether or not we were going to be nearer to 16.6 or whether somebody else was going to be nearer to a multiple of that. But anyway, those are the rules. And in fact, when the BBC asked earlier whether we were counting on our seat, I said, when we entered this election, we accepted that elections are run by rules. If I won it, I'd be very pleased, but if I didn't win it according to those rules, then I'd be equally pleased, because I accept that the rules of elections must be followed to the letter. Now, I don't think it's something that's been withheld from people that the onslaught against us during this campaign has been more than against any other party in this country in recent times. Much more than it was against the old Labour Party when it really was Labour in the early 20th century, much more even than the Communist Party during the period of the Cold War. But somehow we've overcome it. Despite the fact that I've sometimes opened newspapers and thought, well, I'm not going to vote for them, and then suddenly realised they were talking about us. But despite the lies, despite the money, despite the misrepresentation, we've managed to win through. They might be able to slow us down here, they might be able to slow us down there, they might be able to stop us from achieving one objective, but they won't stop us from achieving the next objective. But ultimately, party objectives are not what all of this is about. I regard this as the first step towards the United Kingdom, the British people, getting freedom from the European Union dictatorship. Thank you.
So that's Andrew Bronze, the new BNP and the first BNP member of the European Parliament.